What's going on, everybody? It is Stefan here with Vindec EU. We have another great episode tonight, and I'm very excited. Also, our next live panel is coming up October 20th, and that is Monday, and it's going to be at 6:30. And we really want to thank Always Flavored for their hospitality. But we are switching our location from Always Flavored to Blue Stallion Solutions in Fredericksburg. It's about a 6-minute drive difference, and this opens a little bit more space. There's bigger speakers and TV capabilities, so we'll be able to use an interactive screen for my presentation and what I'm doing, helping the panelists visualize the questions and really helping everybody else have a great time through the Vindec EU Healing the Hustle platform. I'm really excited about this mainly because as we're growing this, intimate space is really important to me. And a lot of times, you can get so distracted in certain environments. And this really puts us almost in a classroom setting that really tunes us in. And not only that, but in the future, without giving too much detail, we are working on other one-day events and some other ideas. So it's not only just the platform for Vindec EU, but it's also the continuation and then partnering with Blue Stallion Solutions, which I'm so thankful for Rob and his wife, Shindell. They are perfect. They are a great team, and they are located here in Fredericksburg. So if you need business coaching or leadership, they're a great company. With that being said, I want to go ahead and say our announcement here. So welcome to Vindec EU, where healing isn't a destination, it's a declaration. Each week, we speak to real people navigating trauma, burnout, and purpose behind every business, brand, or hustle is a human being. And tonight, we're diving into the mental health side of entrepreneurship because none of us are doing this alone, even when we feel like it. So tonight, I actually have on Jonathan Emery, which I'm not exactly sure if you've seen his podcast, but I was a guest on his show, which is really awesome. And let's bring him on and learn more about Jonathan Emery here. How's it going, my dude?
Going well. How about yourself?
I am doing wonderful. I'm excited to be back in the podcast room on another great conversation. And you're always a great person working very hard in the community with podcasting and brand building. So I think this will be a really great conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to see where this takes us.
Right. Well, now it's my turn to interview you. Last time we talked about me. One thing about Vindec EU is really talking about the truth behind what is so glamorous. And that's sometimes not the so glamorous side, which is the hustle and really sticking it out, especially when either you're in the beginning stages or even when you're in the advanced stages and things become stagnant or stale, and being able to persevere that and really navigate those tough times. So with everything, your journey started from losing your job and starting a podcast. So let's go ahead and dive into that. Let's start with the beginning steps and really tell the audience, a story.
Yeah, absolutely. And feel free to jump in anywhere you want, and then we can dive a little deeper too.
Oh, fantastic.
So about 5 years ago, I wound up losing my job after 20 years. And so it was around COVID. It wasn't due to COVID. It was just like they weren't profiting. And so I was in the warehouse, the logistics side of the company, and production stopped October of that year that they were going to shut down. And like 60 some people walked out the door. Right. And so that was already enough to see that happen. And then they asked me to stay. So I stayed, and then I stayed some more. Right. So they dragged it out for me and a couple other people till May of the following year, basically for the fact that we had to make sure everything was removed from the facility whatsoever. Machinery, the last things to go before me was the forklifts, right? Because because we needed them to make sure we shipped everything out the door. So it was very hard to see. I don't know how big this place. I mean, it was a printing manufacturing company. It was really big. And it was hard to see that go from a full functioning company to just a shell. I mean, and it basically really got down to that. So I was like one of the last three people to walk out the door. And at first I was like, this sucks. What am I going to do? I have no idea. And I still didn't know at the time, right? Even though it got closer. But then after a while, I looked at it as an opportunity, right? I even had a few people like congratulate me, and, outside of the company, kind of like saying, that's good. Now you can, kind of find something that you really love and care about. I personally think I would still be there today if nothing ever happened, even though I always wanted out. I probably just never would have, because for the simple fact that I would share, my podcast is life's check mark, right? And so essentially my check mark was basically go to school, get a job, come home, take care of the wife, the kids, and have a house and 401k and all that. And that basically was me just navigating that course as I feel like I was taught, but probably just not shared in those words. And so I probably would still be there. But thankfully I got out in a sense, right? Still not sure of everything I was going to do. And I knew a fella that actually helped me with a whole life insurance policy. And so I was really intrigued with how it's structured, how it works. And for whatever reason, we connected again, and he was looking for some individuals to come on board and teach them, train them, and try to sell that product. Right. So I was for it. Like, I'll try something new, something totally different. I was doing side work here and there just to get some money. And this is something totally new for me. Not commission, or I'm sorry, it was commission based, not a 9 to 5, get paid hourly. So I had to figure that part out. And so I just started to dive into what I had to offer. And it took months for me to understand that and how to read it, how to tell somebody. But it got me to a point where a couple months into it, I was starting to learn more, like around filming, YouTube. And I don't want to say anything professional, but it was enough to where I could make something to share to the world what I had to offer to them and if it fits for them. And so I enjoyed that. Even though it was nerve-wracking, it was hard work, and I'm sure there's a lot of shortcuts now than there ever was. But it allowed me to get out of that fear as well for how people see me. And so I didn't have to be afraid of what other people think. I was just there to try to help and support others with what I had to offer with the insurance. So that whole YouTube part was a learning curve. And I also dove into like a program to kind of, it's a Darren Hardy program. It's like the compound effect thing or something. It's something along those lines. But I was able to meet like 30 people, and we went through the modules together because we all bought into it, and we were just learning from each other. And I still connected to a few of them today. They still follow me, and great people. And that allowed me to grow as a person as well. So like all this was a big change for me, and I wasn't used to it. But it allowed me to grow as an individual. And so I lost my job in May of 2020, and then to January of the following year is when I got from my first client. So yeah, it was a long gap, but that's what it took, right? I'm not one of those that like people I hurry up and get out the door and take care of everything. It's just like I process things slow, and it allowed me to get that confidence to actually reach out to somebody. And it happened to maybe a family member that jumped in, but then who was training me, he said, those are the hard ones to get. Now, I don't know that, right? But he's telling me that. So I have to take that as a factor. So that was January. And little did I know, Stefan, is that other things were going on and I didn't see them coming. So two kids, around COVID. So sometimes they were home, sometimes they weren't. And now I didn't have that job. So I wasn't really, going anywhere. So I was able to be home, take care of the kids, and then, do everything I was doing now or then. And their mom wound up jumping into getting like a part-time job at the school and stuff, and was trying, making some kind of income. January is like the turning point where things were shaky, behaviors were changing, and I couldn't figure it out. Nobody really spoke up to tell me anything. It could have been little things here and there, but it wasn't like a sit down conversation. So ultimately, um, I was trying to figure things out. We're trying to talk to their mom, and this would have been like we wound up doing a divorce. But and I'll get to that point, down the road here of how and all that stuff and navigating through that. But it would have been a 15-year marriage, right? So like I never saw this coming. I never wanted a divorce because my dad's side was they were all divorced, and little did I know, my parents were divorced too, but I didn't know until I was like the age of 19 when I moved out, and then my mom's like, "Okay, you and your sister are on your own now. I'm moving." So, and they were already divorced since I was like 8 or something. I have no idea. So apparently, other people knew, but we didn't
Yeah.
know. Um, Now, did that have any factor in who I am today? I'm sure it does. I don't know what that is, because we had that still of a family structure, I guess, but I never even noticed anything different that could have been going on in their relationship. I only remember once where we did live with my mom for a little bit in an apartment, and maybe they made amends or something, and didn't feel right, so they just bring back to the house. Um, so yeah, so I never wanted a divorce. So I'm trying to like figure this all out. I have like, and I never took anything outside my relationship to talk to anybody about, right? I never really had anything to talk about, like good or I had good stuff, right? But, but it's not me just to go out and brag or anything, and I don't go talking to guys. I always just went to work, right? Come home and take care of the family. And so me trying to figure all this out, I'm getting lost in my head, and every little thing is just starting to bother me, even though it might not be that significant. And now we're podcasters. So funny enough, that January I was listening to a podcast, and it was called. It's still around today. It's called Dad's Edge. So if you want to be a better father, better finances, or anything like that, great podcast. Uh, I was listening to it prior to all this, um, because I wanted to be a better father. I wanted to show up better. Not that I was bad, but I just wanted to be better. And so that January, for whatever reason, I turned it on. I have no idea what the episode was about, but they had their commercial, right? They had their thing going on where they have a men's group and they talk about everything in life, men with men, right? So I jumped on. It was paid, and they had all these Zoom calls throughout the whole week, and I never jumped on any of the Zoom calls because I still did not feel well with what was going on at the house. I wasn't sure where it was going, right? I guess I had that feeling that like it was gonna go in a bad spot, and I just didn't I didn't want to give up the time I would have had with my kids if I was to jump on a Zoom when I had maybe an hour to be with them, right? It's kind of how I looked at it. But what it did do is allow me to connect with like 4 or 5 men who either went through the process or they were going through the process, or maybe they were just there to support other men, right? But these guys were great. I still connect with a few of them today. It allowed me to have an out, have that lifeline in a sense where if something was going on in my head, I would just like text somebody or call them, Facebook message. And usually if it wasn't one person answer, I try somebody else because I'm like, I'm going crazy. I have nobody else to talk to. Now I'm talking to strangers, right? But they were there to support. And thankfully they called, they, answered or messaged right back anytime as soon as they could, right? And it gave me space. It gave me a spot to share my emotions, to share what I was going through, even physically, right? Because I wound up, losing like 20 pounds. Like there was nights I couldn't sleep because I wasn't sure again what was going on. Um, it was great. So, I say all this and I would recommend to whoever's going through anything, man or woman, to reach out to somebody. And it might be not your friend and not your family member. It might be that stranger that's going to actually sit there and listen to you because they've been through it too. So make sure that you take action, and again, know that you're not alone. Somebody else has gone through it, or they already are going through it. I got to a point where it was April, May. the word divorce was mentioned to me at the end of May. It was April or May that I took on this masculinity course from one of the guys, who I still talk to today. Not really knowing then what masculinity was, femininity, yeah, there's a tough word for me, right? Femininity. And I was like, all right, let's go. Let's see what this is about, see if it helps in any way. So it was a 4-week program. It was me, him, and another guy. The other guy, I think, was just trying to be better. He was still married and all that stuff. So I jumped on. First 2 weeks, I was sobbing. I was a mess. I was a wreck. I don't know how they put up with me, but I'm still trying to figure things out with what was going on around me. And here he is teaching how to, like, and I don't remember everything that was taught, but basically, like, be yourself, go do your own thing and separate yourself. You hear a lot of men say, go hit the gym. And that's basically what it is. You're going to relieve that stress, get it off your mind. You're going to be more physically fit and mentally fit too, because it helps. And, I did the first 2 weeks, and then there was 2 more weeks, and I jumped on them, and my composure was better. I was listening. I was talking back to them, answering. And he even mentioned it to me, everything I just said. And I didn't really know what it was that was different about me, and why I was different. But I guess I got to the realization, like, it would be okay. Whether it was going to go down the wrong end or not, it would be okay. I do remember a big piece was, like, communication, how men and women communicate completely different. And I get that today, and I can see that. So, like, as we learn and grow, you start to see people around you, how they behave, how they act, how they communicate. And then now you can either work with them or stay away from them, because, it's like, if you want to call it, a red flag or whatever, stuff like that. But yeah, you can sense that, because, people work on themselves and others don't. And then, who you want to talk to and who you don't want to, because sometimes it's just the little stuff. People are worried about the weather instead of worried about, hey man, what really happened today? Tell me what really happened today. Let's dive deep into, what happened, so we can figure things out. So yeah, like, a quick communication part was, and I say this as, your woman or whatever, your partner made dinner, and says, can you put the food away, after dinner's done, and, they go upstairs or whatever. So you do, as a man, you do. So logically, we're thinking I would put the lid on the pot, put it in the refrigerator, right? Why am I going to dish it out of the pot and put it in a Tupperware container and then put it in the refrigerator? Now I have a pot to clean, right? Where she's thinking, oh, I should have done all of that. Plus, I should have washed the dishes, dried them, and put them away as well. And who knows what else, right? But so the communication gap is, like, she expected me to do all this, but me thinking that I did what she told me to do. That spelled it all out. I probably would have done everything else. So there's an example of where, the expectations come into play, and we're not clearly communicating, where I could be saying, so you just want me to take the pots and pans with the food and put them in the refrigerator? And then she could be, no, take the food out, put it into, and down the line, right? Spell it all out. So, like, that's one thing, like, we can all work on. And I know they call it mirroring. So I kind of I repeat it back to you, and then you reiterate back to me what you really mean. So that's something I learned. And then eventually, it got to that day when, we sat down, and she's like, I want a divorce. And I was just like, I'm done. Like, I couldn't figure anything out. I was exhausted, and I don't know what it was, but after saying those words, it was like a relief of fresh air. I could sleep well. As weird as it sounds, I was able to sleep, and we were still in the same house. Like, nothing changed for a couple months, but yeah, it was just freeing. And no, and then, I had to navigate where things were going to go thereafter. Right. Is there anything you want to touch on before I go a little further?
Yeah, I mean, no, you're doing a good job. Usually, sometimes it's like pulling teeth trying to get people to speak. So
Yeah, don't pull my
just,
teeth.
well, I was at the dentist earlier today, so I could do that. Okay, so let's see here. We have raising two kids. January was a turning point. You didn't want a divorce. Um, Things started to bother you. You joined a men's group. You didn't attend the calls in the beginning. It helped you create a network to talk to. You said April and May is when divorce was mentioned. You took a masculinity course and then learned that it would be okay and then started to feel free. So let's talk a little bit about, relationships. What was the core value of getting divorced? Were you guys just unhappy together? You guys just couldn't work out your differences? What makes somebody say, yeah, like you break up all the time, but when you divorce, it's a little bit more in depth because you usually been together with a person a lot longer than just dating.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it would have been 15-year anniversary for us, and so we were together. I think 6 years prior to even getting married. Um, yeah, I think the problem. I can't speak for her. We never really had that discussion thereafter, right? And
Mm-hmm.
actually, figure everything out. But what I can say is that looking back, and in the beginning, I would say we didn't have the communication part. We didn't sit down and talk about our values, where we both wanted to go in our lives. Yeah, we wanted kids. Yeah, we wanted a house and all that stuff. But we never really said, this is how we're going to do it. Let's focus on this. We did make an agreement where I was basically working, as the breadwinner, and she would stay home with the kids, and she did up till about that point. Um, Ultimately, it wound up somehow opening a relationship somewhere else, and I feel that that's where everything drifted. The emotions, everything went to that person instead of coming to me and actually let's sit down and talk about things and figure this out, because the marriage is important, not the people around it, right? So another thing I learned too, let's focus on the problem, not the person as the problem. So we have to figure that part out. And I would say like that was never discussed in anywhere whatsoever, even prior to all that. It was a whole communication gap in my opinion.
Do you think it's like, I'm reading this book called On Death and Dying, what the dying had to teach clergy, doctors, and their own family? And a lot of it talks about, and especially in the early stages before somebody dies, especially like let's say in the hospital setting, where communication comes hard. They don't know how to communicate. Like for instance, sometimes doctors will bring in a psychologist because the doctor is uncomfortable with relaying the information to the patient, and that actually creates a negative environment. And I think a lot of it times too, especially speaking from my own relationship with Lacey, I think a lot of it too is like it's a learned language. And if you guys aren't both trying to be fluent in communication, it can feel one-sided, and then ultimately it can feel like, well, what's the point? Is that how you guys started to feel, like drift away slowly and just started to just detach? Or was it like a huge like argument and fight over like finances or like, you know opinions
Yeah,
or ideas or?
yeah. I would say let's start. The finances could have been a problem because I lost a job and everything, and that's a big change, right? What are we going to do? And so I know that their mother was focused on the routine.
Mhm.
He's going to work, he's coming home, and he's working overtime. And, there was weeks I worked 60, 80-hour weeks back then. And that was enough to support what we were able to do with the kids and everything. Um, so we never really had that sit down communication. Like, I mean, like everybody's watching a movie, everybody's going out to eat dinner and stuff. But that's it. Like they're not sitting down and, we ask how your day was, and then it's just that it's that you don't go deeper. And now that, another thing too, I was working on myself personally, like growth and everything. Like I signed up for that course and everything. And obviously, I was doing the whole insurance thing. So that was a whole new avenue, meeting different people I would have met before. And so, and I was growing prior to that. Like I was reading books and everything for growth and Rich Dad, Poor Dad and all that stuff. And I had some I had some investment properties before divorce, took place. So, and I don't want to say I was a professional in that area, but it was something that, we had something to hold. And I don't know if she was always on board with it or not. Again, I can't speak for her, but there was points where she agreed and allowed me to do things. And yeah, I think ultimately for us, or I say us, maybe it's just me, is that we just drifted apart, and somebody was just there enough to, listen to her, I guess, somewhere else. And then obviously, the friends changed. So it's like who you're hanging out with, who's the group, are they single, are they married? You know, that also participates and helps, with where you're going as well. And so again, I had nobody. Like physically, I didn't go hang out with guys. I didn't go hang out with other friends. For the most part, those friends were friends of our friends that were married, with their husbands of the women, right? And
Well,
so
yeah,
like,
and
my circle was, yeah.
yeah, and then also you run the situation where friends feel awkward because they don't want to feel like they're supporting one side or they're showing loyalty or whatever. When me and my ex fiance Lindsay separated, I got dumped and left on the side of the road in Arizona 2 days before Christmas. And very much like that, the communication had stopped prior. There I didn't have a job at the time. I was trying to create my company. She wanted me to work anywhere, even if it was Walmart, didn't matter. Didn't matter how much I was making per hour as long as I had a job. And I was like, but as an entrepreneur, I could do so much more, and there's so much more
Mhm.
opportunity by creating my own, value. And I think a lot of times, especially when you don't go into that lifestyle with people, it creates that flight or flight. And I think a lot of times, especially when like something negative happens, like you lose your job or whatever, it's like you're out of your goddamn mind. Why would you become an entrepreneur? You just lost your job, and it's like, well, this is the perfect time to become an entrepreneur because I just lost my job and they're not paying me anymore. So I need
That's
to go
right.
make
Yeah.
some money. But
Uh,
when in that situation, like for instance, like we were on a break a little bit before that, we stopped hanging out every Friday, she started hanging out with other people. I was like you. I was more of a loner, stayed home, recuperated. Um, During this, how do your emotions play in? Because there's part of you who's like, well, fuck her, I'll do whatever else. And then there's a part of me is like, am I really losing? You know?
mhm. Yeah, I think for me, it was like, I think I was losing my identity. Like my identity was attached to her, and that's not the case. And I had to go through all that. Yeah. So I was a mess. Like I'm not going to lie. A lot of men are, because we think that they are our lives. That's not true at all. So yeah, emotionally a wreck. And like I said, I had to reach out to the guys just to fill that slot to kind of figure out where I was going. I would have been even more of a wreck if I guess I went and spoke to a woman, because she would have told me their side, and what I
That's
mean,
funny.
and yeah, and so I would probably would have been lost. But yeah, it was draining. It really was. It just eats you up, especially if you're one that really wants to make it work and the other one doesn't, and doesn't want to even share, communicate anything. It's so stressful. And I didn't say this before, and I hate, I didn't think suicide, but I was told back then, and it's probably a little higher now for all I know, is like 10 men commit suicide every day from divorce, is what I was told from my coach back then. And I didn't know that. So thankfully, I didn't even go down that road, but I can see why a lot of men do. I hate to say that, but I can see it, and it's not just going through that phase, but it's even afterwards, because you're still dealing with a whole bunch of other crap afterwards. Especially if you have kids, you're always talking to them for the most part, right? Not the kids, but the ex, and trying to figure out everything with the kids, and then there could be money still going on, child support and all that stuff. So like that's stressful. And so as men, build an empire, right? And then it's stripped. It's just gone. And for me, I'm not starting at zero. I'm starting from negative, right? And I don't want to say my life's almost over because it's not, but you get in that feeling, you know, that it is almost over. Like you just spend all those years and you feel like it's wasted. It's not, but it feels like it's wasted.
Mhm.
And now you have to pick yourself back up and work on everything. And I went through all the areas trying to work on things. So yeah, emotions can go high and low very quickly and a lot for men going through this like it did for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. When me and Lizzie split, I spent most of my time putting all my hurt and energy into starting my company. And that's one of the valuable things that I did do. I did try to reach out a couple times, but she never called me back. And she taught me a very valuable lesson, although sometimes I feel like it's a gift and a curse, which is the ability to say goodbye. Because when we broke up, there was no baby, I love you, I miss you, come back. There was just radio silence forever. And it's one of those things too where I think you have to realize that, like, even in relationships in a loved marriage, my grandfather and my grandmother were married for 76 years. She died at 84 years old. He had to live 15 years without her. And, even with that, it's the thought of being alone and the thought of loss, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. But I think also sometimes you have to realize that people change, life changes. We don't go into the same things over and over again with the same ideas and mindsets. You see this in memes and on the political things where one guy says one thing one year and another year they say something completely different. But I think the real value is the birth and the growth of communication. And that's one thing that I've learned very well with Lacey, is how to communicate, especially when you're uncomfortable or vulnerable, or you don't know how the person's going to take it. And when me and Lacey first started, we were a one night stand. We weren't even together the first year of Logan's life. We've been in almost fist fight altercations. Actually, one time I kicked Lacey across the room, and one time she threw a bunch of stuff at me. But it happens, and it's adolescence. To be with somebody, to love somebody. And I think a lot of times too is to accept differences, especially in times of turmoil, medical situations, job loss, you know, um, financial debt, something happening to the internal structure or the person in the family. A lot of things can really balance that. So if you look back on it now, where would you say you think the greatest loss of communication? Where did you guys struggle the most? Was it just on opinions and ideas, and you want to do this and she wants this, or you wanted a white picket fence and she wanted a steel, black fence, like where in your situation do you think the greatest divide set it in, where it was like, okay, I guess I could live without this person?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, so let me first start off. We got married in Las Vegas, and it
Oh,
wasn't.
that's great.
Yeah, it was cool. It wasn't, eloping or anything. We did plan it, and we had maybe 30 some people show up.
Was Elvis
So
there?
yeah, I'm sure he was all over the place, like 20 of them
Oh,
maybe. I
I
don't
didn't
know.
know if you went to an Elvis
Oh
wedding or
no,
like
wait,
a
no,
specially
no,
themed wedding.
no. This was
'Cause-
we did it at Caesars. It was outside, and then they had I guess a restaurant inside. We sat down and ate and stuff there.
oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it was really nice. But I say that because it was really expensive too, even though it was Vegas. It was all planned out and everything. So it was a different. And I want to say I was 26 when we got married, so it was a different lifestyle that we weren't around before. And I feel like that was like opening the door, like, oh, this is great. We can live it up and we could go do all this great stuff at any time, right? And so I think that I want to say, in my opinion, that kind of trickled down, and like we can afford this, and we couldn't afford it, and throughout our relationship. And I feel like that was a separation too, because it's like, we can do it. One's saying we can do it, the other one's we can't, even though, and then the other one might just agree just to agree, right? And I feel like that was a part too. So then obviously when the job loss came around, then there's like, well, what do we do? We have lack of funds, even I had a severance package and everything, but it was still a struggle. So I would say, one of it would have been the financial struggle probably for the whole time, because I'm trying to get rentals and stuff, and I'm trying to build that. And that, to me, that was my out for where I was working, but it was just slow, and I didn't have a mentor or anything. So I was just trying to figure things out on my own. So there's that. And then, when it came, if you want to just stick with the finance, when it came down to sitting down with finances, it was me basically like, this is how, where we are, this is how everything's set up. And I felt like the other person just didn't want to be around. It was too much. Right. And I'm trying to share it. So I felt like we were in it together, but then I also felt like I was alone, trying to make things work. And that's just if we're talking about finances and stuff. And I know they say finances is one of the number ones, but I also think it's just, people are just so quick to get up and get out than they are to try to work on the problems within the relationship itself. And you mentioned it a few times there. It really comes down to these life-changing events to find out, how special your partner really is. And are they in it for, life or death, and, or till death do us apart, sickness or in health, and that's the time you find out, unfortunately. But, and then loyalty, that's like one of the values I wrote down, and I haven't written down values. I did it about a year and a half ago because somebody told me and taught me how, but that's something we all should know. And like now I share all this with you now, Stefan, and I could take all this and I can share it with my kids now, and they can see everything I'm doing. And I don't know everything, but they're getting a head start from where I was. Right. So I have a son and a daughter, and you could see that he's thinking logically and she's throwing her emotions all over the place. And I have to be like, dude, this is who she is. This is how she's acting because, what's going on.
Thank you. Can you get my regular cup in the office? That was Lacey, actually.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah, awesome. So
although I think we're gonna get a divorce because Lacey, this is not crushed ice, this is cubed ice, and that is terms for divorce. So I'm getting divorced.
Oh boy. Well, make sure you communicate this first. You can work this out.
I don't think this can be worked out. This is unforgivable. Love you. I actually joke with her all the time. And even my friend Yoda, who's doing the moderation in the background, changing all the screens for us, I'm always like, Lacey, I want a divorce. But, I think so too. And you kind of touched the nail on the head there, is you have to figure out who's in it to win it. And a lot of times people get scared. I think there's also this misconception that marriage is supposed to bring security. It's supposed to bring this roof over your head. It's supposed to bring these things that are normal by society. And the real reality is, and what I'm learning as a person, which I can't stand, is we really have no control. Like there's an illusion of having control, because like right now, this house could collapse on me and I could die. I have no control if the house stands or falls. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I go outside, I could get hit by a bus. I have no control whether the driver is looking or not. I think the biggest thing is realizing that, and that's what I'm trying to do, is life is not perfect. Even government, as you can see, is not perfect, right? The value is it's what we make it. And I think every day you have to decide whether or not you want to take that drastic change, because usually, in a marriage that involves finances, split of, property, everybody's usually moving. So there's that. And then there's also the decision of, you know, is this the final straw in the sand? Is this what I cannot take about this person? And I saw this thing on Instagram where it talks about how the people we love most, especially our spouses and partners, are the ones that are going to drive us to crazy, because you truly get to know how a person really is when you love them, you know, like even with your children, right? And the problem with that is a lot of times when we go into relationships, we go into like the honeymoon stage where it's all great and it's all just love and romance and lust and, you know, I can't live without you and everything. But then, as we talked about already, there comes the real world. There comes, you know, today I lost my job. Today, you know, our son is in the hospital. Today, my mother passed away. Today, I buried my father. You know, today something horrible happened. And it's how strong I believe that, you know, that relationship is based on. Is it just based on good times? Is it based when everything goes right? And you see this in friendships all the time with people who will come around you when you start doing really well. And you're kind of the limelight, and people are like, oh man, I see what you've been doing, blah blah blah. Sorry, it's been a while. And then you also see the people who have been with you when you're like, dude, I'm struggling. I am not in a good place right now, you know. And I think it's a thing of, I don't necessarily think it's their fault. I think it's a natural response of trying to save yourself, and, you know, like a defense, like, oh man, well, my friend's struggling, that I, you know, I don't want to cause them any trouble or burden. It's like, but how would you cause him burden unless you were the one that caused him to struggle or making him struggle worse? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ultimately, you would be there. And I think a lot of times we forget that because we have our wants, we have our needs, we have our desires, we have this picture perfect world, which I sometimes have to get out of because, you know, life is not, you know, picture perfect, and realize that no, this is the real version of relationship. This is the real version of marriage. The not so sexy, the not so fun, the twirling our thumbs together, wondering are we going to survive it or not type deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, do you think, like, if you were to give it a percentage ratio between you and your wife and letting go and starting to divide, who would have kicked it off and who carries the bigger percentage?
Who would have kicked off like separating, like from our
Yeah,
own
so
ways? Yeah.
divorce was mentioned in April and May.
Yeah. Yep.
So you know, if there's two of you, so
Yeah.
you know, 50-50 essentially, make
Mhm.
100 out of that percentage. Who wanted it the most?
She did, I would say, because
And she,
I did everything on my end. I felt like I could do. I was one of those guys like it's date night. We gotta go do date nights. That's the problem. That's not the problem. You know, obviously she was already emotionally disconnected, and if there was anything else, I have no idea. I didn't go down that road to figure it out. Um, yeah, I mean, like I you know, looking back, I feel like I was probably more than the 50% as far as being in the relationship, trying to make it work all the time. You know, always showing up, always remember the dates. Like, you know, I was that person. You know, gifts for whatever reason. That was me. You know, and just, you know, I'm working late, but I'm really not working late. I'm running to the store to go buy something special, right? And then show up at the house. Yeah, that's what I was doing, and you know, I'm sure it was appreciated and everything. But again, it's not like keeping score or anything. Like that's a thing that you don't want to do that. But I also know, and I agree with this. You know, women need their buckets filled every day, right? And they're going to forget about tomorrow or yesterday. I mean, they're going to forget about yesterday. They want to know what today's like, right? But they'll remember that one bad thing from like 10 years ago, and they're going to bring that up when you piss them off one more time. Like that's always going to be in their head. Um, I hate to say that, but for the most part, it's true. And so when you have those bad moments that was 10 years ago, that's when you should be sitting down and talking about it in that moment when it was 10 years ago, not now, not when everything's blowing up and you feel like you already, as a man, you feel like you already did talk about it. She's fine because she didn't mention anything, but in her head, there was something wrong. So that's a big issue too. That they'll hold on to things for so long when they should, you give that safe space, you should address it then, right? And you have to find that common ground where you guys can work it out. Like, if that person, you're going to make them upset, can you talk it out right now and figure it all out? Or do they have to walk away for 15 minutes and say they'll be back in 15 minutes so we can figure this all out because they're frustrated. They want to control their emotions. They don't want to get all upset. And, especially for the men, they don't, we shouldn't be like throwing our fists and hitting walls and stuff like that. So if that's who you are, you should be walking away. Right. And then coming back and sit down and, relax. But, yeah. So yeah, for me, I feel like, I was more all into the relationship, all the way through.
Yeah, no, it's funny. But when you say hit the wall, there's forget the situation or the background behind it, but story is some guy punched a wall, and instead of fixing the wall, they put a picture frame around it, so it looked like it was a picture frame of somebody that punched the wall. Just to doll it up. Going back to kind of what you're saying is like for instance, like when me and Lacey have disagreements, like we still fight all the time. Like, now our fights are now more like we disagree, we blow up, she goes somewhere, I go somewhere, and then about 15 minutes later, it's like, so you want to just like move on? And it's like, yeah, all right. And it's just like it's not a big deal anymore. And I think a lot of times too is, it's a learned language. And I think when things go wrong, even like, in life, it's easy to be happy in a good mood when things are going right. A lot of times, when things go wrong, that's when people's true colors show. That's where people's real alternative motives. And I think a lot of times we look directly at right now, like if it was like a pinhole and no more further is this life going to progress. So exactly where we are right now is how it's going to be forever. So like if you lost your job, in somebody's mind in the relationship, they think that, oh my God, we're going to lose the house and be homeless. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But people lose their jobs all the time. I think a lot of it too is being grounded with the understanding that when you're in a relationship, you are going to be with that person in a lot of different settings, very unique settings compared to other people that experience that, type of relationship with that person because you're, the partner or the spouse or whatever it is. And I think a lot of times we have to realize too is we didn't fall in love because we knew it was going to be picture perfect. We fell in love because we loved that person. But sometimes, even in my, past relationships, that's still not enough. And some people feel like they need to be satisfied in other ways, whether it makes sense, whether it's realistic, whether it's not. Somebody could leave you for a richer guy and then she gets dumped and is, living in the trailer park with her new boyfriend 8 years later. You know what I mean? Like right. This whole perception of, my partner has to be like the most like perfect and be able to be perfection at every single thing, I think is a miscalculation because we're all human. I think it comes down to love. Do you or do you not want to continue to love this person regardless of what is currently happening right now? And if the answer is yes, you two, please take a step forward together. If the question is no, please separate hands and stand in either other corners, for the next stage of, is this going to last or is this not? Is this the, final stand? And I think a lot of it correlates to being an entrepreneur because, as an entrepreneur, even speaking for myself right now, it's been a very different year compared to most of my years in business, very different. And, you get this shell shock of like, do I run for cover? Do I go get a quote unquote real job? Do I, sell off everything and downsize, and it's the same thoughts that you would have in a relationship as if the relationship is tanking. And I think a lot of times before you throw the grenade in the hole and plug your ears, you should really take the investment of it's not happening to us. Like Jim Carrey says, it's happening for us, and this illusion that we're going to be dead on the road and in pieces in a matter of minutes is not always the case. And I think a lot of times, and even in my past relationships, when I didn't have a job or I didn't, have these things, all these people who left me thought that they could find it so much better. Well, Lindsay, the girl that left me, she lives in a trailer park with her boyfriend, and her parents were worried that I was going to wind up in a trailer park. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Doesn't matter where you live, it's home. And, and all this stuff. And yet I'm the one that, set out on a career to become an entrepreneur. And yet that you didn't have the courage to stay around. So you left me, because you thought I was the one that was risky, but you settled for much less in a loving relationship much later. What's the difference? You know what I mean? You expected so much from me. And I kind of feel like that in the situation you were like that with your wife, where it was like, you expected so much from me, but what about the next guy? Will you give him leniency? Will you give him opportunity? And if so, what changed? What do you think about that?
That's a good question too, man. You just shooting them. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I stepped out and I worked on myself. Right. And I feel like if somebody's just going to go from one to another relationship, they're not taking that opportunity to know themselves and work on themselves to find that person that's actually going to be the best for them. So I think it's a big risk, and we all know statistics. We all hear things and stuff, and I hear from for the most part, other men, but even other women say the same thing too. Like, just be ready, if it happens again, right? And not to me, but on the other side there, I try to be careful with my words here because I'm not. I wish the best and everything. It's just like you hear and you see everything, so it's just like I hope that their mother is different, right? And
oh yeah, I wish the best for
right.
Lindsay. If you're out there,
I just want. So that's why I'm.
A good life.
Yeah, right. So, like if you're not willing to separate yourself and figure out where was I the problem, in the relationship, and how can I be better in the next relationship, right? I feel like that part's going to lack in the next one for sure. And again, if you didn't sit down and figure out how to communicate with people, I would imagine that other person didn't sit down either. It was just somebody's hurting. You find someone and you just like leech onto each other because you're there for support. And that's kind of just, I feel like how love happens in a sense.
Yes, but also that's also a way that trauma bonding can happen. So
exactly.
You have to be
correct.
Careful with that, because that can also give you the false illusion of feeling of love or relationship or commitment, especially when you're going through something with somebody. And that's why, especially like with sex trafficking victims and other things like that, trauma bonding is honestly one of the biggest things that keeps them in a situation versus leaving. It's that feeling that either I can't live without you, or somehow at a disadvantage. So and if you look at a normal relationship which is healthy, you have the same thing. How could I live without you? It's the exact same concept. It is, my life somehow will dramatically change for better or worse with or without you. And I feel in a way it's almost an unhealthy mindset, because instead of you saying, I'm nothing without me, I'm now nothing without this other person. So if something happens to this person, or this person did something to me, where does that fall back on me as a human? And like you said, masculinity, and you as a person versus you as a team now, because that would been discontinued.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, trauma bonding is the perfect word to use for something like that. Yeah, I like that. So I feel like that's it can carry over for sure. You know what I mean? Like, so we gotta be careful where we go into the next relationship, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people do trauma bond, and then they're stuck in that relationship, and then unfortunately, as you know, most of them don't work out thereafter. So again, I say all this wishing the best, but it's just like everything you hear, you see, um, going on in the world where people are just jumping into something else so quick. The odds are against you, you know, and you might now just stay in that other relationship just to make it work because, like you said, it's love. It feels right, but it's not even right. It's just like this is how we have to be, and maybe those people think that, okay, I screwed up on the first one. I'm not going to screw up on this one. So I'm going to make this one work no matter what it takes, even if they're not communicating still. Right. It's just like, I'm not going through this again and giving up and going on, find somebody else. Like, this is love. So yeah, I think it can easily carry over. And for me, like, I'm not perfect, but I feel like I've learned so much on my side. Now I'm, joining entrepreneur groups and venturing out and going to events. It's stuff I never would have done before, right? And so it's opened up a whole new world to me where it allows me to be, I guess, I want to say free, right? And you're not confined to just one place all the time and one person. And we're both podcasters, so we're able to talk to so many people. It's a weird thing for me to share this with you because I still consider myself an introvert, and I know everybody laughs when I say that, right? But I think I'm at this level now where I'm comfortable. I'm talking to you. It's like a one-on-one deal, even though a lot of people could be watching at the same time. But it's allowed me to get to that space where I do start to go on stages, and that was never a thing for me. Like, I always shied away from it. Um, and I know I'm switching gears here with like the whole podcast thing, but it allowed me to open up a whole new world. And I was kind of mentioning before where I had this group of friends, prior to the loss of the marriage, and then it got really small, and now it's slowly expanding, and I'm finding those people around me. I'm growing, so I'm finding the right people, and so that's allowed me to grow as an individual and start communicating, talking to people, being more present, showing up to things I never would have, taking chances on risks, opportunities, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And just see where it goes, right? Because I don't want to be that person that has regret later on in life. I want to say, I did that. It was fun. It failed, but I did that. And you can too. You can go ahead and give it a shot. Maybe you can make it so much better than me. And I get to have the opportunity now to do things and show my kids, like, this is what I'm doing. And, if they want to hear or listen to me, great. Hear or listen to me, hear or watch me and see what I'm doing. That's awesome. And if they want to follow, cool. I've taken them to my one live event I did back in January, and it was small, but it was fun. It was just the first one, and they enjoyed it because it was a lot different than the real big event we went to around podcasting. So it's getting them in the other groups of people that are out there, getting expanding their horizon. My son's 15, and I wound up speaking at a men's conference in August, and I'm like, look, we could take our kids. I'm like, you want to come? He's like, yeah, I'll go. Not, he had no idea what he was going into, and it was a small thing too, but there was like 10 speakers. I was one of them, and he was the only son that showed up, which was fine. But he was able to meet people I've known, meet people I didn't know before, and then hear their side of their stories they went through as a man and still are navigating, if they already are. Some of them had addiction, and then, one had a bad problem going through a car accident and had to like rebuild his whole life. And so like that opens up doors, and that's what I've been loving lately. So I'll express if you are going through something, maybe it's for a reason, right? And maybe it is that opportunity, even though it might hurt at the moment.
Mhm.
And I know you said Jim Carrey said for you, not to you, and took a while for me to have that sink in as well. And I totally agree with that, right? And so this is not just happening for me, but it's happening for my kids. As weird as that sounds, as hard as
Mhm.
that is to say, they're able to see two sides right now, and they get to do and choose whatever they want to later on in life. Um, yeah, so take that risk, take that chance, take that opportunity if it ever comes your way. And yeah, and the whole introvert thing. Um, yeah, I know you laughed, and again, other people do too. But like there was one group I went to, and there had to be like 30 plus people, and they're all around this huge table talking about who they are, what they do. And I already shared my piece, so I'm just like in the back listening, watching everything. Like that's how I just take it all in, right? And one guy at the night, the after party or whatever you want to call it, he was like, "I saw you. You were just sitting back there." He's like, you know, I just see things, and I'm like, "Yeah, I was just taking it all in. That's just what I
Mhm.
do. I don't need to talk to everybody. I just want to sit down like this and talk to a few." Other than that, it's like a meet or greet kind of deal because there's not enough time in the day to sit down with 50 people and get to know them one on one. So, and for the most part, I podcast on my side, so I'm more of the listener, right? Instead of, we flip sides here.
Yeah, that. Mhm.
So, right? So,
I've been waiting for
this
people to ask me to be on their show. I'm like, come on now.
is,
Mhm. Mhm.
but yeah, it flips. You're like, you really want to hear what I have to say? Are you sure? Yeah. So that's fun too. I like it.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm an outrovert or extrovert.
Extrovert,
Outrovert.
yeah. Yeah.
I
Ex-
like the attention. I love being on camera. Other people do not like being on camera. I absolutely love it.
uh,
No, I do mess up sometimes and I have to say my lines a couple times here and there. But it is what it is. We are at the hour break. So what this means is we have a 5-minute refresh. So get up, use the bathroom, and then we will be right back here in about 5 minutes. And then we'll start our second hour, which will dive into more of this wonderful conversation.
okay.
Awesome. I'll see you in 5 minutes. All right, everybody, we are back from our break. You know, the breaks are a really great portion of this show because it allows you to get up, use the bathroom, think about what you're going to say next. I got some cannabis here, and let's bring a John back in. What is going on, good
Yo,
sir?
man. I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. I told Lacey to tune in. I was like, you know, I've been saying some really good shit about you. And then I'm not watching it. And I'm like, well, come on now. Telling
I'll
you,
make sure you
might get
get some
divorced
clips
tonight.
out of this for you.
Might get divorced tonight. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh boy.
And so diving back into this, let's talk a little bit about now when you guys separated, was that like a clean divorce or was it like a nasty divorce, like very complicated?
What do you mean by that? Like
Okay.
arguing and
Yeah, so some people when they get divorced, when it comes to dividing the goods and getting ready to say goodbye, it can turn to like a non-communicative situation where everybody's like after one another, and this person wants the house and this person wants this much of their X of the savings. Like, was it like that, or was it pretty much just like, hey, didn't work out, we're gonna do this?
yeah, so for us, I would say that it was like we mutually agreed on just moving forward and see how we can divide everything. And we never pursued a lawyer. We did mediation, so we just agreed on stuff as it came. Yeah, it was a little struggle figuring out. Yeah, this is you get more, you get less, except stuff like that. So not everything was exactly 50-50, one way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was like no throwing fists, no name calling, anything like that. At least not in public, or to each other, right? But yeah, it came to it took, I think within the year it was final, so it was rather quick, I was told, which other people drag things out. So
Well, yeah,
um,
exactly, yeah.
yeah, so we didn't drag it out. It's like, dude, once we're done, we're done. Like, why are we wasting time? And if there was somebody already on the side, then I'm sure they want to move on as well. And
Oh, there was
but
somebody already on the side.
yes,
Okay, so did she cheat on you?
that's what I mean. Emotionally, yes. Physically, I don't know. I never went down that road.
Got you. Okay. And so how long was she talking to this guy for?
Well, again, it was probably around December, January that I saw names pop up on text. I never went to find out, what was said or nothing. Um, and I knew she knew him for a long time because, it was through like the school activities and all that stuff. But I had
Got
no
you.
idea if there was anything going on prior to everything. Right. So maybe me losing my job and going through all that opened up the doors and showed me what was could have been really happening or not, and it just progressed because of all that stuff. I have no idea. I never wanted to be that person. I didn't really want to believe that there was you know something against the trust, the love, the loyalty, and all that stuff. So it was very hard for me to, is this really happening, right? And so that's why I never really navigated down that road to see how deep it could have actually really been. I just let it be what it is and moved on.
So how come you didn't pursue it? So like one time I dated this girl named Vanessa, and when I left for Florida for motorcycle school, she cheated on me with my best friend. I got a text message saying that she was hanging out with my friend Nick. And I was like, well, why would you be hanging out with Nick? You know what I mean? You just never do that when I was around. And anyways, she wound up cheating on me a lot. Now, don't get it wrong. Did not throw myself under the bus, but at the time when I was 18 years old, I didn't tell her I was married. But me and my wife were also separating, but I was seeing other people as we were getting separated. I wasn't always the best person, and I did like to play the field. But through there, what do you call it? Not only did she do that, but she ended it with Nick, and then we quote unquote got back together. And then she slept with like 6 other dudes and really kind of whore herself out. But in that sense, it was one of those things where I feel like, in a way, it was a little bit vindictive. I hurt her, so she wanted to hurt me. Do you think, in your aspect, was there anything like vindictive behind it, or was it just your wife found somebody else and they connected and you guys were kind of falling apart to begin with, and then maybe just blossomed?
I think that's what it is. The latter. I think it was like, hey, this is the bad stuff where I'm having at home. Somebody's there listening to me. Everything's being spilled. Again, something's being told to somebody else instead of to me, to how to fix things and make things work. Instead, this other person could be like, oh, I agree with you. I'm here for you. Whatever we want. I have no idea, right? But those are the things I can think of. So yes, and the relationship builds and grows, right? And that's just how things work. And then so usually, and what I found out was that's usually what women do. They'll gravitate, to another man first before they actually leave the relationship they're in, because there's, like you mentioned, there's that sense of security and stuff, and like they want to be secure, and they might want to be secure in the finance aspect, and maybe if they're muscular or whatever, um, as far as like fighting somebody off, it could be a lot of things.
Yeah,
And
but I don't think women really nowadays are looking for men as like protection. Is this? I mean, granted, as a very small person, 100, 5'7", 140 pounds, and that's only because I'm getting older. I used to weigh 127, but apparently, as you get closer to 40, which I am, you just start gaining weight, and it's like, where did it come from? But with that, I've always, had that, loss of thought too. It's like, well, how would I defend myself? And the true reality is, most times you just give them what they want, and hopefully they just take off running and you can live your life, and that's actually a tactic that a husband and wife did in a rich neighborhood. They were robbed as they were coming home late at night, and they just gave them everything and the dudes ran off. I mean, your ability to sit there and play Superman and fight off 7 dudes in front of Lois Lane here is very few to slim there, kid. You're going to wind up dead. The
right,
biggest thing is protecting, and that's making sure that you too can get away. It doesn't mean, going out there and being the hero. Usually the hero dies, and that's why he's the hero. A lot of those awards in the military, especially, are worn posthumously, and it's one of those things where I think that's another misconception is, well, I need a strong guy that's going to be able to protect me. Well, protecting you could be emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, in a lot of different ways than somebody coming out. Because when's the last time you were with your wife when you were married and you had to physically protect her from like intimate harm like that? It's
right,
not like
yeah,
that, you know what I mean?
hmm
And I think, again, it's just kind of like this thing where there's so much judgment on men to be the leader, to stand up, to take care of their family, to have a good job, to be able to be the provider, to be able to be strong, and all this stuff. And men come in all shapes and sizes, and you know what I mean? So it's a variable thing. I just think it's messed up when people in relationships, whether it's the guy or the girl, will gravitate to somebody else because somehow they think that the grass is greener on the other side. And being with this person is going to equal so much more love and happiness and value that this relationship couldn't withstand. Although what this relationship lacked was communication. It's not that you guys didn't love each other, it's you didn't know how to communicate with each other. Whether she stays with this person or not, time will tell. You know what I mean? It's just, I think that's what it comes down to, is like society has built these stigmas around what should be, and it's bullshit, because love, I thought, in my opinion, was what you make it.
yeah, yeah. And I I agree with everything you just said. I was just referencing as those could be the reasons why people,
Oh,
other
no,
women or
absolutely.
whatever.
Like, think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it. Like a girl's dating this guy, like it's like say she's dating a guy like me, my build, and then some macho football player shows interest, right? And
Mhm.
she's always been into big dudes. Well, her dream guy was not the skinny dude. You know, she fell in love with the skinny dude, but her dream was this big masculine guy. So unless she's fully committed and truly loves, me, there will always be a balance. Just like, I forget the Johnny Depp said, if you um hold on, there's something about loving the second woman and never loving the first woman. It's like something like that. But that's one thing about relationships, especially with like being with Lacey. Now maybe she's watching, maybe she's not, but it has taught me a lot about, which is the different factors that are just as valuable as like you know like date night or looks or physical touch or everything like that. A lot of it also comes down to just being able to do the day to day with each other and the boring, the mundane, especially when it's scary. And I think a lot of times we look for excitement, because that's what we want. We want fun and exciting. Who doesn't, right? And
Mhm.
relationships, long lasting ones, they have their highs and lows. They have moments where they're boring, moments where maybe you guys aren't getting along the best, and then there's moments where you're inseparable. And I think a lot of times when people go into relationships, they feel like they should be getting something, not contributing something. And what people don't realize is love is much like a garden. If you don't pay attention to it and take care of it, things will perish, and that's true with anything. And I think a lot of times in society, especially today, with money, items, materialistic things, big houses, the American dream, we get lost in the sense of what is true love based on, and that's why, with finances and status and, big versus small, alpha male versus, the average guy, it's like there is so much of balance. I mean, I'm just my opinion. Sorry, I'm ranting. You should talk
No,
more.
you're good. You're good, man. That's an extrovert coming out. You just want to be on camera. I think that's all we're going for here.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to become more masculine. So this way, if Lacey leaves me, I'd be like, listen, ladies, you can watch all my footage. You
That's
just send me a submission if you're interested. I do require a background check because I was with a broke chick one time. Will not do that again. I'm just kidding. That's
That's
actually
funny.
another thing too. When you get married, you should get a full background check and a credit report.
That's right. Oh, you can start that here. Let's start
Yeah,
now.
right.
Yeah.
It's like, hey,
Oh,
I
man.
really want to tie the knot, but what's your FICO score?
Because that's going to draw the line right
Do
here.
you have a
Yeah.
12-year plan or 10-year plan for your savings?
I'm willing to bet there are people out there that do that too, but
Much
yeah, we joke
smarter and
around about
richer
it.
than we are.
Yeah, they could be. Who knows? Oh man. But yeah, let's see where we can go from here. Cause it just yeah, so I mentioned how it was, I felt like it was more one side. And yeah, it was, and then so I had to navigate, going through that, right? So after we said yes, for the divorce part, it was like I had to work on myself mentally, and because I wasn't fit, right? And so I wound up doing listening to some YouTube videos, whatever, anything inspirational, whatever could help me out in the morning, and then I started writing down what I was grateful for, and stuff like that, like a morning routine, stuff I never did. So yeah, those were one of the things that I had to jump into and learn about myself. Who am I really? Um, and tell myself like I could do this. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And so I worked on myself that way first, and it takes a while, right? So nothing becomes a habit overnight. You just got to keep continuously showing up and doing it. And then, you know, for me, the next thing was just working myself physically. And, you know, thankfully I have some equipment in my house, and I was doing stuff for, I don't know. It wasn't anything quick right after that. It was probably after she moved out of the house and did her own thing that I started to take more focus into, you know, working on myself that way. And I got results because I was following a book or whatever, but it wasn't like the stuff I wanted. So eventually down the road, I did hire a personal trainer, and I worked with him for like 6 months. And you know, it was virtual, even though he's like an hour or so away from me. But I'm not driving an hour or so each way uh, to see him and then work in person and then come back. So it was a good way to get that routine, yeah, right, and then get on track with a diet. And we joke around about gaining weight when you're older. I was around 180 before the marriage came final, and it got, I lost 20 pounds, so it got me down to like 160. And then when I hired him, he got me down to like 139. I'm like, what the hell is this? I don't want to. This is cool, but this is not what I was thinking. And he's like, no, we got to do this.
Yeah.
We got to get
Now
you
you
to this level.
understand. People are like,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's so nice to be so light and so small. And it's like, yeah, try it, motherfucker.
Dude, that was so hard just to even get there. And I was like, dude, this is not where. No, we have to get you here. Then we can focus on building you out, right? So, and that was just like a 3-month stretch just to get me to that point. But yeah, I know what it's like, and it was kind of like, it's like you're not eating. It's like, it was weird.
Yeah.
But even though you look more physically fit because your muscles are showing, it's just your fat's not there. But that got me to a point where we were able to progress and do more lifts, more weights and stuff with the lifts and everything. But yeah, so that was like another area, and then another one and this is the order I went in. It doesn't mean that like this is how you have to go. I just share like this is what worked for me. So some people want to work on their finances right away. That's up to them. I wanted to work on myself because I feel like if I didn't work on myself first,
yeah.
I don't think I would be where I am today for sure.
No.
So for me, then spiritually, like I just worked on myself spiritually, and it's been about 3 years now. Like I never went to church really when I was young. The kids, or not the kids, my parents took me when we were kids every once in a while, but it wasn't like a big deal. And so I listened to this again. I listened to another podcast, and I forget who was on there. I forget even what it was about. But the one guy was like, "Just wake up in the morning and say thank you. Thank you for being alive." Is basically what you're saying to yourself. So I did that, and he even said, he's like, it's going to take a while, but you can do it, and just focus on that. So I did, and it wasn't like he was talking to me directly, but it felt like it. So I did, and I don't know how many months or whatever I must have been doing it, but then it got to a point where I just said, "Thank you, God," and I'm like, "What is this? This is new for me." And it got me to like reach out to the one person I would consider a friend around me because he goes to church and everything, and he's like, "I think you're just curious." No pressure, no nothing whatsoever, right? And he's like, "Just you're more than welcome to come to the church. Just feel it out, see if it does anything for you." He did recommend a Bible to me, which is actually written for fathers to like teach their kids, and it's like in plain English. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Again, it's not in print anymore, so I had to buy it from eBay. So I did find one, and I say all this, and it's been like a 3-year journey going to church, not every weekend, but for the most part, most of them, listening to some stuff, some podcasts and stuff around it and everything, praying, in the morning, at night. Again, I don't know all the scripture. I can't repeat anything word for word like a lot of people can. So I never really dove in it that way. But it's a way to, if you want to believe in the universe, whatever you want to call it, it's a way to kind of put the pressure on something else in a way to give yourself relief from whatever is going on. So you can actually focus on what's more important, because then the real stuff's going to happen that way. Right. So yeah, there's a lot of things coming at me now, but like I'm like so focused on, like the podcast and everything else I'm doing with that, that I don't want that other crap around me to drag me in that direction. Right. So if I can just like share to God, or you can share to whoever else it is or what it is, it can open up that space to be free in a sense and allow yourself to just move forward, step forward into whatever you're working on, knowing that something so great is going to become of it down the road. Again, and this goes right back to the risk and the opportunities, right? It's just like you just keep moving forward. Like there's a reason stuff is happening for you, and just keep going with it. Like,
Yeah.
and I mentioned I joined entrepreneur groups and all these other groups, and it's allowed me to get on speaking stages and books and everything, and going to masterminds. What a game changer. It really is. And it's never been a thing. It was never a thing for me. I probably would have never done any of this if I didn't go through the whole divorce and the loss of the job. I
Yeah.
kid you not. Right.
Well, sometimes goodbye is a second chance.
Yeah, there you go. Isn't that a song?
Well, it's in the song Shine Down. I mean,
Okay.
it's by the band Shine Down, and the song is Second Chance, actually.
There you go.
And it's true. And I think that's a lot of times too, is in the beginning of the breakup, you don't see the value of what happens. And I think I agree with you very much the same. You worked on yourself, I worked on my company, and that builds you. I think a lot of times we as people think that to take us to the next level, we have to gain something. I used to be very materialistic, and so I started doing psychedelics a lot. And I always like at one time I had like 16 pairs of Oakleys, like I had like, and all this stuff, and I always thought like, this stuff makes me better, like this stuff, people are going to see this and they're going to think I'm a cooler person. And the reality of the sense is none of that makes you really any cooler. It's just stuff you wear. The truer sense of, I believe, of becoming sexy or more desirable is by learning, educating, and becoming better. You know what I mean? Because one of the things too is, how could you love another person if you can't love yourself? And if you think by loving another person you'll learn to love yourself more, you're wrong. Loving another person, unless you love yourself first, isn't going to work, because you'll still be focused on you. When you get to the point where you love yourself and you love the things around you and you love everything that's going on, it's a lot easier to be, committed and, everything. But when you detract that and you don't think the same way, or you lose that feeling or whatever, yeah, it's a total detachment, from what is. And that's the thing too, is, people change. A lot of people, even if you look at them, are like seasons. They're here for a little bit of time and then they're gone. And that's life. And I also have learned too to not try to take it so personally, especially with relationships with people, because in a way we're all in our own reality and we all want to wind up on top or do the best we can do. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of that, and what you said is true. It's like, if you really want to be good for yourself, good for another person, you got to love you. But at the same token, you got to find somebody that's committed to you, like, and it says in that marriage, for riches, for richer and poorer, for healthy and sick, they talk about, from all these different angles. And when it really happens, you just see people run for the hills. And I guess maybe people weren't always told that, not everything that is gold, what is it? What's the quote? Not everything that glitters is gold. You know what I mean? And a lot of what you're going through, especially in a relationship, is not what's advertised,
You're right.
Especially in
It's
marriage.
not.
That's the biggest fucking bullshit. Because they're like, oh, when you get married, you'll be with your wife and you guys will be able to go out and go on dates all the time. Nobody told me about real life and having to do all this work stuff and support the family together and all this. I thought we were just having fun,
Right.
like
Yep.
what is all
Yep.
this survivability stuff that comes with this shit?
Got to sign up for this.
Yeah.
Oh man. But you're right on the money there. You don't know about that till you actually just jump in and say, okay, now I have kids, now I have a family, now I got to support, take care of all this, and how am I going to do that? Right. So you don't have those questions in the beginning. You kind of just navigate through it as you go through it. And we have to show up. I guess as a man, we have to figure it all out, right, for the most part. And I feel like that most of the women out there are like leaning on us just to figure it out. When it should be a team. It should be a team effort. I do like this one saying. I hear it, every once in a while, like on social media or something, where you know you want the woman that goes into battle with you, right?
Mhm.
And that's what I truly believe would be the next person, right? And see, so whatever I'm doing, she's doing. She's right there next to me. Like your wife is supporting you all the way through. I think, and and that's
I'll
what you
comment
want,
on that in a
right? So,
second.
all right, but that's what I think. I mean, that's what I would want, right? And yeah, she'll steer you in the right path if you're making the wrong turn, right? And you want that as a man too. You need somebody there to gently guide you in the right direction if you're drifting away. Go ahead. I'll let you mention your comment.
Yeah, so yes, Lacey has been one of the best things because we met as a one night stand, and for a year we were in and out of child battles with courts and fighting for full custody and doing pickup and drop off dates. Um, and when we weren't together, because when we met, she was on a break with her boyfriend, I was on a break with my girlfriend. So it just happened to be she was a model, I was a photographer. It was a very long weekend. She wound up leaving with Logan, and one day she called me and she's like, "Hey, just so you know, I'm pregnant and I'm pretty sure it's yours." And I was always, and I always have been excited about being a dad. The biggest thing, like you, was, well, okay, well, if we're going to have a kid, my biggest concern was, how are we going to pay for it? Because at the beginning in that time, I was just starting my company, so I didn't have any money. You know what I mean? And we went through a whole relationship, and it was kind of hell in the beginning because my ex-girlfriend at the time, is very touch and go with all this news and, me talking to Lacey and all this stuff. And anyways, Lacey one day told me that she's like, maybe not now, but one day you're gonna want to realize what it would have been like to be a real family, and that's gonna haunt you. And I don't know why, but it just stuck with me. So me and my ex-girlfriend broke up, and I went down and I told Lacey that I was like, listen, I broke up with my ex-girlfriend. I was like, we should be together. I thought about what you said. I was like, we can run our company and do all this stuff. And she actually turned me down and she said, no. She's like, I don't believe anything you're saying to me. She's like, you're lying. She's like, somehow you're going to use this against me in court. She's like, I'm not buying any of it. And I was like, no, I'm being very serious. Well, anyways, um, it was New Year's and she had called me to check I called her to check on Logan. And we talked while I was filming for like 5 hours. And then right after, in the middle of the night, I drove from Baltimore all the way down to Richmond because I was filming in Baltimore. And we got snowed in together and we've been together ever since. But with Lacey, I will tell you that Lacey has definitely taught me how to love somebody unconditionally because one, we were never designed to be together. And two, if you look at us, we are very different people. Like what I like, she's not into, and what she's into, I'm like, we have some crossovers, but we're very different when it comes to people. But I have never had anybody like Lacey that is by my side. And God forbid if you hurt me or say something bad to me, it's not me that's going to fire back. It's going to be me holding her back because she will go off. Like Lacey is a very great person, and I am very, very lucky. And there are sometimes it's what I told her to watch. But you know, if you don't watch, I'm not going to tell you which timestamp I'm going to say this at. You know what I mean? You have to watch the whole thing, and I'll be like, oh look, I said it at the end. But no, with her, she has always been by my side, and that has showed me what true love and what a true woman will do. She will, like, if I was like, Lacey, we got to go to California tomorrow because there's a big opportunity, and you know, there's some people that, you know, want to interact with me. She'd be like, okay, well, let's try to get plane tickets tonight then. You know what I mean? Like, it is, no matter what I come up with, she always is like, okay, we'll do that. Or I'm like, you know, like I sold my Jeep because last year I was putting more money into my company. And I was like, you know, one of my biggest regrets is selling my Jeep. And she's like, don't worry, we're going to get you another one. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, she's so good to me. And sometimes I'm not always the best, but I have learned that there are women out there who, if they truly love you, they will stand by you regardless. And that is what I'm trying to teach Logan when he gets into the dating, because he's 10, you know, so like 4 more years, you know, 14, 15, 16, and start being interested in girls, is a real woman doesn't give a fuck. She loves and only wants to be with you. I could wind up homeless tomorrow and Lacey would be like, don't worry, we'll make this tent like a home. You know what I mean? Like, you know, that's the type of shit. I could literally, like, when we were modeling, or she was modeling, I wasn't. I was, you know, taking photos. Like, she would travel as a paid model, and we would go everywhere. And guys would be like, "How come you're not jealous like all the other guys?" And I'm like, "Dude, I could leave here, go to the, you know, the Waffle House, spend 3 hours there, let you guys do your shoots, and come back and not have to worry about a thing in my mind." You know what I mean? Like, that's like, it's just that real, you know. And I hope, you know, are you married again?
No.
Okay. Well, when you find the right person again, because, you know, there's always somebody for somebody. I hope you get to experience that, because they say who you marry is one of the most important decisions of your life, because it really determines your altitude. And when you have somebody that believes in you, that is constantly pushing you forward, there are times where I'll be like, I'm a fucking loser. You know, and she'll be like, no, you're not. She's like, don't talk to yourself like that. And I'm like, Lacey, but look, all of it, everything's falling apart. And she's like, so it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not, you know, she's never recognized me as the nasty things that I say about myself. And there's sometimes where I'm talking really nasty to myself, and she'll be like, I'm going to choose to exit the room because I'm not going to sit here and let you talk to yourself like that. So you can talk to yourself like that alone, but I'm not going to be here for that, because I don't believe those things. You know what I mean? And that's like what I've been blessed with. And sometimes, like I said, I feel like I don't deserve it, but you know, you deserve it, and you'll find somebody. And it's when you least expect it. Lacey was supposed to come over for photos, and like every other model, they usually just get their photos and then they head out. Most models, especially like the higher end ones, they don't really want to talk. You know, they do this so much, it's a routine for them. They're in, they're out. With Lacey, you know, it was different, you know, and it created, you know, everything that we're doing now. But no, I can honestly tell you from experience, and I've been with a lot of bad women, and I've been a bad person too, so I can't always say it's the women. But a real person, they don't care. I've been in some embarrassing ass situations, like with my health and things that Lacey's had to look at and everything like this. And not once, have I ever felt judged or, unloved or anything. Like I texted Lacey, I was like, hey, can you grab me the cranberry? And she came down here and brought me the cranberry. You know what I mean? Like that's how you'll know you found it. You could just be like, hey, this. And then the other person's like, when? And do we go now? You know, it's like, hey, I need to spend this much money to invest in this. Okay, go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we've invested in so much stuff, and so many things have not worked out. And she's never held it against me. She's never made me feel bad about, oh, well, you spend the family money on investments and sometimes they don't work out. None of that. It is just like, it's okay. We'll figure it the fuck out. Don't worry. I love you. So that's what I would recommend you look for, because it has nothing to do with anything. Like, and that's why I get upset with people who look at relationships when it's like, well, you need to provide. And it's like, no, we're a fucking team. You know what I mean? Like, we do this together, So sorry, keep ranting.
No, you're saying all the good stuff. That's what you're saying, right?
Well, it's just true.
Yep.
And
no, I know you. I know it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm right there with you. I totally agree with you, and that's what everybody needs. Yeah, who knows when that's going to happen. I'm focused on everything else. So like you said, at least expect it whenever that happens. But yeah, I want to thank you first of all for sharing your relationship, with the audiences. I don't know how open you are every time, but that's what people need to hear, right? They need to hear that good love relationship and how it stays strong instead of just hearing all the crap that's on social media all the time. This is what they need to hear. So make sure you clip all this out for you and just like put on.
Yeah, this would be my oops, I forgot our anniversary. Hey, watch this clip on YouTube.
That's right. That'd be awesome. I love it.
But another thing too, and to add to that topic is, I think a lot of times, and that's why, meeting in spaces that are not like your work environment or where you're competitive with other people, it really helps too, because you want the person to see you for you. And I think sometimes in today's world, we compare everything to everybody. And don't get me wrong, I'm judgmental sometimes too. And I try to be better about that. But I think the biggest thing is recognizing that everybody has their differences, and most of the world is full of average people. I'm an average person, you know what I mean? And the reality of this fairy tale life, and marrying the prince and riding off in this like stagecoach wagon. I mean, if that's what you want to do at your wedding, you can do whatever you want. But the real reality is, it's not the wedding day that everybody envisions. It's the life together. And that's something that you can't see and you can't fathom because it hasn't happened yet. And I think that's the biggest thing is, it's easy to fall in love when you feel something. But when you lose that feeling, like there have been times in our relationship with Lacey where we have almost separated, or we've had talks about maybe, like one time we were like, maybe we should start seeing other people, and then we had other talks about maybe, we're not good for each other, or maybe we're too different and maybe we should just think about being co-parents, But when part of that goes into throwing in the towel and sticking to what is more important, which is one, a real family that's built by a child and two people, and then two, the desire to move forward together. I mean, there's so many ways and opportunities to be like, oh, let me jump ships, or oh, this would be so much easier if I were to find somebody that had so much more money, or you had it all figured out. And as I was talking about earlier too, is this illusion of having it all together, which I'm still trying to battle myself, is the fact that it's not all perfect and it's never going to be. The real value of love is being able to do it unconditionally, and that's without judgment, that's without criticism. Even though you may criticize each other, you don't criticize the core value of why you love the person. And I think a lot of times too, when it comes to fast type of relationships moving in and out, um there was a point where Lacey said that, after she said that to me, she let go. She said, she put it in God's hands, and if we were going to be together, we were going to be together, but she wasn't going to pursue me anymore. You know what I mean? She was done doing that, and if it was going to happen, it would. And it did. You know what I mean? And there's no way in a reality that it should have. So sorry to keep to rambling on, but it's just a valuable thing that just shows you that sometimes, what you think you want and need versus what you actually get are two different things. And the ability to find that person to just be with, because at the end of the day, nobody wants to be alone or feel like they're alone. And you may even have a great relationship. And I, like with my depression and anxiety, there's still times where I feel alone. But imagine having to do that by yourself, versus being able one day to find that person to do it with, and that's one of the values. So I really encourage you to just have the belief and just know in your heart that somebody is out there for John. And it's the person that is just replicates all those attributes, like Lacey and all these other great women out there who truly love and support their husbands, or whether they're gay or lesbian, their partners or spouses, and just realize that love is one, it really is a battlefield. Two, like the song. Two, that it's about resilience, and it's just like about making it in the real world. If I don't make it in my 20s, I'll make it in my 30s. If I don't make it in my 30s, I'll make it in my 40s. You have people that get married at 70 years old because they just found their soulmate. And even though they may get 20 years together, to them, that's a lifetime. So I used to be the same way, because I've been in a lot of relationships before Lacey. And, and like you, overdoing things, wanting to do things too much versus on who am I? What value do I bring? And even and what have I created? And what you did is so invaluable, because now you have built something. And that is the platform where it'll become real, which it already is. And that's the stepping stone to your foundation, your future, whatever comes next. And I think that's the real value is realizing that if it's not today, then someday. But if I give up today, then it'll never be my day. That's from Steve Harvey.
That's a good one.
I've listened to a lot of people talk.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to be on stage talking. So if they get your advice on how to get on more stages.
On stages? Is that yeah.
Yeah, I want to be in front of millions of people just talking. And here's the kicker. They all paid to be there. So unlike right now, where I only have one viewer, there will be millions.
Yeah, you'll get it, man. Gotta keep going. That's all.
Hey, you got to build the dream. But you know what? You can't get up, and you can't get discouraged. The love of what you do, or why you love someone, or why you do what you do, is because of how you feel inside. And I think that's something that we also have to recognize too, is it's an independent journey. It is not a collective of other experiences or success rates. It is truly what you are able to bring to the table with that person and what happens next. And just like with your podcast, imagine if you never did this, you'd be searching for yourself, but you took the chance, you did something, and it became something more, and it gave you something more. And while you're on these travels, while you're, doing all this great stuff, there's plenty of women that are going to be coming You know what I mean? And you'll be able to meet all of them, and one of them may become your wife.
Yeah, you never know. I don't know. What'd you say? Yeah, I know. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, it's yeah, the whole, you're right. The whole podcast, the whole speaking, everything has changed my life completely, for the better, right? And so meeting people around the world, especially through the podcast, and then hopefully meet some of them in person. So sometimes it's on the podcast, and then you meet them in person. Sometimes it's in person, then they might jump on the podcast. But yeah, I enjoy it. It sounds like you do too, just from our conversation here, and when you came on mine and everything else you have going on. So I can't stress this enough. Like, if you want to change something in your life, do it. But I would highly recommend thinking about just having a podcast, even if you don't do it long term. Just finding that chance of doing it and meeting people, even if it's just Stefan talking about everything with his wife, and giving her praise and stuff, and sharing that all on a podcast, all those different episodes like that. That's well worth it. Who knows where it's going to go from there? Somebody might just need to hear it, or even watch it if you do it with video. For me, it's changed my life, but it also changes the guest's life, also changes the listener, and then it also changes the person that's not even listening yet, because they don't even know anything about it, but then somebody else is going to share it with them. So you're hitting it from so many angles, and that's how I view it. And that's why I just keep doing what I'm doing. My mission with the whole podcast is hopefully that episode, like when you came on, reaches out to that one person, needs to hear it, knows that they're not alone. They can get through something as well that they're going through. And, because you did. And so now they can follow your guidance and go through that. Or they might know somebody and share it to them. That's the whole reason why I just keep doing what I'm doing. It has nothing to do with audience, has nothing to do with money. It was just all simply just learning about somebody's journey, and it just gravitated into what it is today. So yeah, it's great to be connecting with a bunch of people and expanding, finding out that, hey, I could do this. Like, right now I didn't even mention this to you yet. Like, you're on my list. Right now I'm working on an anthology for the podcast, just guests. And so I can only have so many people in there, but that's like new to me. Like, I never thought of that. Well, I thought about it when it was around like 52 episodes, but at the time it wasn't going to work. But now I'm like around 170. So there's enough people, there's enough even guests that are still wanting to come on. There's an opportunity there before it's published. But like, that's a whole new thing, right? So that's a game changer. And then just doing live events and everything. So, as we travel through life and we go through these unexpected life changes, twists, the turns, just know that there's a reason for it, and you'll find your way eventually. It might not be right there in front of you, and you might be like, why am I even doing what I'm doing? But, it could be, for example, it could be the podcast that starts you on a journey and gets you on stages. Right. And then stages is where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be in front of people, talking, meeting people, shaking their hands. Maybe that's where you're supposed to be, but it's the podcast that led you there. Right. So you'll navigate through it as you go. We all know it's never a straight line, right? It's always like up and twists and turns or whatever. But if you take the beginning and the end and you stretch it out, it's still a straight line, right? It's just not the straight line you thought it was going to be. So it's just, enjoy your journey and just keep moving forward. If there's anything else you'd like me to share with anything, the whole journey, the podcast or whatever, let me know.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry. We muted my mic. Oh yeah. Well, that's what good cannabis will do. And I grow my own. So there you go.
There you go.
One of the best things about Virginia, homegrown. I do agree with you. You said something about a tingled line and pulling it out and having a straight line. I heard this on Instagram and said, faith is like following a GPS. Never once do you question a GPS. Never once do you say, are you sure this is the right direction? And what happens when you miss your turn? It automatically reroutes you, just
Mhm.
like life. And that is one of the best things about life and about understanding that. And when you have two people that can understand that and weather that together, because I think this happily ever after bullshit is untrue. You know, for me, in my opinion, happiness is not a constant state of emotion. Happiness is what you create. You know what I mean? So you create happiness by doing things that promote happiness, like date night, you
Mhm.
know, giving your spouse a hug or a kiss, you know, things that you create. But I think everybody has this illusion, especially when it comes to like materialistic items and people and relationships and connections. Well, if I only had this, then this would be so much better, and it would fix all my problems. And I think like that a lot of times when I'm going through my own problems, and then I'm realizing, but it doesn't change anything. You know what I mean? The real reality is clarity, is being
Mhm.
able to think clearly, understand, have value, have perception, and then find that and turn that into love and be able to, you know, work with people and, you know, your spouses and other things like that. And I think a lot of times people get so let down because they don't feel like, well, I started dating this person and I thought that this would happen, or I thought that they would propose to me. You know, I think there's just so much expectation in relationships. And one of the things that I value about me and Lacey is at the end of the day, it's the constant understanding is, listen, we're at where we're at. You know, like, you know, we can sit here and freak out, but it's not going to change anything. We can sit here and say, oh, it's your fault and I didn't do this and you didn't do this and we should have done that. But that doesn't change anything. You know,
Mhm.
what changes something is saying, okay, what's fucked up? What are we going to do to fix it right now? Because it's fucked up, you know? And I think a
Yeah.
lot of times people, especially in relationships, and I see it even, you know, not to throw me and Lacey under the bus, but when things happen, it's so easy to point the fingers and feel like instead of being one, you now are on opposite sides. And it's like, no, you didn't do this, and you didn't do this, and you aggravate me because of this. And it's like, guys, it was just a letter in the mail. You know what I mean? But because of those undealt with emotions or those undealt with conversations, when something bad happens, like you losing your job, it becomes so much more than that, because a lot of what you were dealing with was not just because that's one thing happened. It's just like even with suicide, like when I talk to my suicide survivors, when you look at their situation, a lot of them in the same aspect. Oh man, I just lost my train of thought. Remind me, two steps ago, what did I just say? Like 2 steps ago.
Same aspect. You're
No, before that. Come on. You're not listening either. That's really bad. I'm just kidding.
listen to you. I'm trying
Uh,
to navigate with you.
yeah, right. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, now we're a team, right?
That's right. Let's work
No, it's your
together.
fault. You were not
You're
listening.
bringing up
See,
suicide. You were bringing up
it was,
suicide, and I
it
don't know
was,
why.
well, it was around the same concept, because I totally just forgot what I did, but it's a parallel to the thought process. And I can't think of it right now, but it'll come to me. But it was a really good correlation. But anyways, the point is, I think we decide ultimately like the end goal of what we want. And I think a lot of times in relationship, what you get versus what you thought you were going to get can be a lot different. And sometimes that letdown can also be the factor of, well, I don't want this anymore because this is not me. I'm, you know, this is changing me. I'm not this person, you know, like midlife crisis status. Yeah, I'm still thinking about the correlation one. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
it's no. You're fine. I understand. You're gonna be stuck on a. Can we rewind that real quick, please?
See, I need to get to my advanced state like 5 years from now where I have that capability. And it's like, let's rewind that. bring it up on the board, like,
That's right.
yeah, like, like a real time instant replay. Well, you said this. Oh, really? Let's wind that back.
Yeah. Let's bring that up.
So earlier in the show, when you were saying all this, what did that mean?
That'd be funny. Oh my gosh. This is great. Awesome.
Well, we are at the 2-hour mark, so I can let you go. Before we go, though, where can people find you and how can people support you?
Yeah, so start with checking out Life's Checkmark podcast, Apple, Spotify. It's on YouTube. Just go subscribe, listen. You can hear about Stefan and that, or you can go to lifescheckmark.com. So there I have a coaching program to help people start a podcast. I have the Podcasters Hub, which is a group of other podcasters. We gather together and we talk about podcasting, what each one of us is doing. We have special guests like yourself come in. Also, I'm working on live events around podcasting for next year. So that is only available at the moment for the Podcasters Hub, and then it'll go to people outside of that if it doesn't fill up. But yeah, so those are the best ways to find me, right? So the website, and then just go listen to the podcast. Like, start learning about these inspiring journeys that people I have come on and share. And, hopefully it connects with you and it connects with somebody else that you might know. That's what this is all about for me. So the more listeners, the more, you can share it out, the better, because I just want these exceptional people to be heard more often. Right. And so that's the name of the game. Right. And I'm not trying, like when I have the hub get together, like I'm all about promoting other podcasters and their podcast. Like, I don't care where my audience goes. If they go in the right direction that they need to go to listen to that episode or that whole podcast for whatever it is, that's probably what they need at the moment. I'm okay with that. Like, this is not just like a me game. This is all about like, let's do this as a collective and work together. So thank you. I appreciate this.
No, I appreciate you. And, good for you for sharing that information. And, and that's the biggest thing, is helping one another, because we all have story. We all have perception, lived experience. And a lot of that never gets told. And, my recommendation for people that are just starting a podcast, oh, well, hello, honey, is start your first one. It doesn't matter. And if you can't think of what you would talk about, think about what you know the most about and make it a podcast. So if you know a bunch about cooking, make a podcast about cooking. Talk about your favorite recipe and how it's changed your family's experiences through Christmas and how people need to, write this down. There's just so many opportunities, and there's a podcast for everybody. And whether one person is listening or a million people, the real value, and you touched on this earlier, is doing it for you. If you love what you do it because you love what you do. Everything else, as far as the success, the money, the sponsorships, everything that people seem to want to chase, comes with value. Worry about creating value, a community, connecting with that community, building that community. That's where the value is. That's how your show will get heard. That's how your voice will get heard. If you're only doing it because you think it's going to give you something, you're going to be sadly mistaken, because it doesn't work like that. People want authentic, they want real. And when they find a platform, they want to know that that platform is based on something, because a lot of times people, especially like a conversation like this, are going to come for perspective or a new way of learning or a new way of conversation that they may have not heard of. And you get to be the conductor of what that's like for them. So when you provide things that are meaningful, you're always going to have an audience, because people like to laugh, learn, and play, right? So you create that environment and everything else follows. If you only focus on the outcome, you will totally miss the point of being a creator. And part of being a creator is realizing that not all the time it's going to get seen, but that's your job as a promoter, to promote your work, talk about your work, and invite people on your show, get connected. You should reach out to John, get him on your podcast, be on his podcast. the idea is we are a village of people. You know, we need to bring back unity and realize that we're really screwed without one another. So sorry, I ran a lot. See, if you let me smoke and talk, we just keep going.
What are we doing here?
Yeah, I get an internal monologue. It's like, okay, now shut up, because it's like you're talking too much.
That's so funny. Awesome. This is great. Thank you very much.
Well, appreciate it, my dude. Guys, we have more podcasts coming your way. October 20th is going to be the event at Blue Stallion Solutions here in Fredericksburg. It's a great place. Now we're going to have a big TV screen that posts all the questions, and it's an interactive board that I'm creating. We'll also have a whole surround speaker system, so very clean audio. It will be live, so you'll be able to watch this if you can't make it, but it's a great conversation. I'm also working on another group, which is Secret Squirrel right now, but it's going to be in depth, and this won't be televised or even put online. This will be a very in-depth conversation and group, but lots of really great things are coming your way with Vindec EU. And next year, we are working with a university for a 2-day event, which will be here in Virginia. So definitely invited out to that. It'll be a great time, and we have more things on the way. We will see you guys very shortly here at Vindec EU next time. Peace.